Danse Tawia, Belinda Daniels Nēhiyawēwin, Sturgeon Lake Wichinia, Maga Saskatoon Nēhiyawēwin. Welcome.
Tanse Moinanto, Peter Turner, Nēhiyawēwin, James Smith, Cree Nation, Wichinia.
Tanse Andrea Sterzuk Nēhiyawēwin, Watson Otsenia, Maga Oskanaga Sistege Nēhiyawēwin Megwats. I am a professor at the University of Regina, and this is my cat Bear. And I'm really happy to be joining my colleagues, Belinda and Peter.
Good day, everyone. We're excited to be part of this conference and panel with ē-ka-pimohteyāhk. We're going to talk today about our research paper, ē-ka-pimohteyāhk, nīkānehk, Nēhiyawēwin, Cree language revitalization and Indigenous knowledge regeneration. There are 4 other members of our research team we'd like to acknowledge that could not be here to join us today. Randy Morin, Dorothy Thunder, and Bill Cook, who are with us here in spirit. We start from the understanding that there are many ways that people organize their linguistic resources. Indigenous people around the world have developed language reclamation strategies and projects. In our context of what is currently known as Canada, and in the territories of ourselves, mostly Nēhiyawēwin, and one of the members who is Nīhīdāw, the TH dialect, and as well with the settler participation. Our indigenous language revitalization is a growing area of concern for both community members and Indigenous scholars. Our particular Indigenous language camp began 15 years ago and has since evolved into an annual gathering of language activists, both teachers and learners. Our study of this camp examines the following research question. What are the experiences of adult participants in a land-based Nēhiyawēwin Cree language immersion camp? We draw on our research experience of this camp to address the topic of knowledge production in Indigenous language revitalization. We have organized the following presentation in a form of a conversational approach. And with that, I'll ask Belinda to lead off with the first question.
So Belinda, I'm going to ask you a question. Can you share a little bit about Nēhiyawēwin Cree understandings of language, land, and spirit? And then can you also talk a little bit about what those understandings mean in terms of research methodology?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Peter. We have 3 other members missing, not 4.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Maybe Bear's the other member.
Yes. So anyhow, I'm going to extract from our actual chapter in regards to that question. As Nēhiyawēwin, we believe our languages are alive and sacred, and our languages reveal a high level of rationality that can only come from an earlier insight into power, which is a quote that I insert from my Uncle Willie, who's also from Sturgeon Lake. So with that, because language is alive and has a spirit, so is land. Land is also alive and has a spirit. And we as Nēhiyawēwin treat them like our Mushumawak, Gomawak, meaning that when we pray to like the sun, and we pray to the bison, and we pray to the wind, and we pray to the fire. And so we pray to these 2 things too as well, language and land. And all of these things have songs, a calling song, because we draw on these things to help who we are, and this is what we do. And so with that, what does this mean for research methodology? Well, it means thinking in a different way. It means operating and being in a different way. And so this is where ontology comes in. And if we're relying on ontology and thinking about these things, such as land being sacred and language being sacred, well, then we have to teach differently. And we have to be in a different way when we teach and learn language. And so this is what our research is about.
Great, thank you.
And so, is it my question?
Yeah, it's your question
Or
for
Andrea.
Peter.
Okay. Oh, Peter, yes. So Peter, I want to ask you, can you talk about the way we planned and conducted? Oops, sorry, wrong question. Peter, can you talk about conducting language research in Indigenous communities in ethical ways?
Alrighty, thank you. I'll start by explaining that we observe ourselves as Indigenous and Indigenous subjects rather than looking at the anthropological model of subjects as participants as research. So our research is manifest in the reproduction of the ways and actions of our ancestors. These ways and actions have made practicable through berry picking, fishing, medicine gathering, canoeing, playing games, storytelling, even sharing meals at the camp. And then on deeper levels of prayer, offering tobacco, pipe ceremonies, and sweat ceremonies that often take place at the camp, cover all these layers of traditional Nēhiyawēwin cultural practices. All of these activities become moments of learning and growing together as teachers and learners. We enact these moments in ways that our ancestors would have connected with each other, and as well as ways our ancestors would have connected with the spirits that Belinda had spoken about, the spirits of the land and the language. So we're not simply attending the camp and going through the paces of building vocabularies or learning terminology. We're actually immersing ourselves in multi-layered, multifaceted experiences in building and adding to the spirit of the language and embracing that spirit in ourselves. So that's a real good way of thinking through our language research, is something that we're doing, as well as the research itself is something that we can observe afterwards through our approach. I'll now ask Dr. Sterzuk.
What are you calling me Dr. Sterzuk for?
Can you talk about the way we planned and conducted our research project, and what did you learn from this process?
Yes, I can. Thank you, soon to be Dr. Turner. First of all, I want to start out just by saying that I'm not Cree, I'm not Nēhiyawēwin. I'm a settler. I'm a white settler living in Canada in Treaty 4 territory, and I count myself really fortunate to be able to be part of the Cree language camp and also to be part of this research project. And so the things that I'm going to share next are things that I learned from doing this project with my friends and colleagues. These are not things that I knew. So the project started out as basically conversations around the campfire. I remember putting golf balls into the lake and talking with Belinda about this idea. And it was a series of conversations while we were at camp learning together. And it sort of was, it started out basically, we saw value in thinking deeply about the camp as an approach to Indigenous language revitalization. And so we needed to figure out what was the right way to approach that research. And so one of the things I've learned from reading a lot about Indigenous research methodologies is that these approaches often blur the line of researcher and participant. And that provides opportunities for co-learning, and it flattens that hierarchy of researcher and the researched, the participant. So ultimately, we decided to research ourselves as a group. So within our team of researchers, there are language teachers and language learners. And we decided to use sharing circles as our approach. This is a well-documented research method for collecting data in Indigenous language, in Indigenous research methodology. Their sharing circles are effective, they're culturally appropriate, and they're a method that lets researchers and participants make sense of complex experiences. And that's what that language camp is. It's a complex experience. So as researchers, we are able to co-construct a collective story based on these three circles. As Peter mentioned, we followed cultural protocols and incorporated methods that let us access spiritual knowledge. Some of those included smudging and prayer. One thing I want to talk about is the importance and the centrality of relationship building in our research. It's something that's very different from how I've experienced Western research approaches in the past. We didn't become close by doing the project. We were deliberate about being close so we could do the project. And we did that in a few ways. We invested in actions that let us strengthen our ties. We live in different cities, in 3 different cities. So we had to work hard at this. We found ways to connect through conference calls. We have a group text. We pray together every Monday night for the language and for each other. We plan opportunities for socializing over meals whenever we are together to do our research. Visiting is really important in our study. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it nurtures our intimate connections and our relationship building. Teasing and joking and laughter is really important to us. We tease each other a lot, and it's not by accident. Maintaining those good feelings are ways that allow us to maintain connectedness, and that improves our research because through our closeness, we can think and be together in deep ways, in complex ways. I also just want to mention that our coding was also different than other ways that I've done coding in the past. We engaged in holistic, cyclical coding. It was collaborative. We stopped and ate and talked while we coded. We went outside while we coded. We smudged prior to our coding. We had pieces of paper on the wall that we could gather around together and read. It was, and I also just want to say we went back and back to it. We would sit and return to the data and talk and return to the data and text and bring the pages out again to think more the next time we were together. So it resulted in really rich understandings of the excerpts from our circles. And I also just want to conclude by saying that there were some bumps in the road as well. The research ethics committee at my university wasn't familiar with the approach that we were using to our research. And there were some challenges to our design that we had to work together to smooth over. Ultimately, we were obviously given approval to conduct our research. And the other thing is that we had to learn how to do this research as we did this research. And ultimately, I think we arrived at a model that allowed us to think deeply about the camp and come up with some good answers to our questions. And I've learned a great deal from the project. I continue to learn from it as we think about it together. And I hope you'll all read our chapter and the book, because I think it's an excellent piece of literature. And I'll end there.
Thanks. Yeah, that was pretty fun with the golf balls. I just wanted to make note that they were the floaty kind. So we went back and picked them up and took them out of the lake.
Yes, that's important.
So yeah, with that, I want to say me next got wow. We hope you're excited about this new research in regards to Indigenous language revitalization. Check our hashtag out, #NLE, and also follow us all on Twitter. I'm Belinda Daniels 9. Peter, what's your handle?
At Saguatamo, at
Maybe find Belinda and find Peter that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nēhiyawēwin.
What's that?
¿Cómo estás?
¿Cómo estás?